There's a sense of online community and this great sense of our reach being so grand now, and yet we're still so individualized. There's now almost like a dichotomy between social media making us feel connected when we're more separated than ever from relationship and true community. Hi, thank you for joining yet another episode of Get Set with Lissette. This is where we have inspiring conversations that empower you to get set. This is also a community that I'm looking to build, a community built on empowerment, on positivity, and on neighbor helping neighbor and allowing us to uplift one another, learn from each other, and continue to push forward. It was important for me to say that because today's conversation is specifically on the idea, concept, and need for community. So, as I always say, I start every episode with some context, with a what does this mean? Where is it coming from? And kind of just laying the groundwork on that. So, as usual, the definition of community from Merriam-Webster is a unified body of individuals. The key word in that definition is unified. See, the definition of unity is a condition of harmony, continuity without deviation or change, as in purpose or action. These things are important, and the context behind and the definition behind community, in my opinion, was important to lay out this conversation because we have to talk about A, what does community mean? And then B, why is it important and where does it show up? So the classic phrase, "it takes a village," comes from an African proverb that refers to the idea that many people are needed to care for a child. That's where the idea of "it takes a village" comes from. That quote is what led to today's topic. Because it takes a village not just to care for a child, but it takes a village to care. Period. It takes a village to care for each other, to build and be in community. What led to me to talk about this today specifically is because I have a loved one that I care for deeply who recently lost her mother. And in that conversation, of course, I was quick to the usuals, my condolences, my love. But then I also said, what do you need? How can I show up? And I just continued to be there. And in the midst of that conversation, we also started to have a moment of reflection and just discussing our childhood and our upbringing. And in doing that, we talked about the huge difference between life and what life was like when we were kids versus what kids today are growing up in. You see, my parents both come from very, very big families. I don't know if I've shared it before or not, but my mother is one of 9 and my father is one of 10. The cousins and the aunts and uncles and the family it's real. Like, it's huge. And I remember when I was a kid, there wasn't a week that went by that I was not surrounded with, if not all, a good majority of my family. My grandmother's home was the hub and where everyone came and gathered. We constantly went in and out. We were always around each other. I've had countless sleepovers. I mean, the reality is that I've had more sleepovers with cousins than I did with friends from school because who needs a friend when you've got cousins galore? Like, I I come from true community. And that community has only continued to grow. And yet, our true community has shifted and it's not as grand as it was. And so I say all that to say the conversation came because I started to self-reflect while speaking to this individual and reflecting on our childhood, how individualistic we have become. How the idea of caring for you and yours is so great. And don't get me wrong, there is a level of importance on ensuring that you're okay. There's a huge importance in breaking generational curses. There is definitely something to be said about taking control of self, doing personal work, and making sure that you are okay and that you're not putting yourself in uncomfortable or unsafe situations. So I want to just disclaimer that. Like by no means am I saying to be in community you must put you to the side. No, that's not it. However, I do want to say that it takes a village to really be healthy and to really be cared for. See, that phrase conveys this message that the community, not just one person or organization, is accountable for a child's success. But again, that same phrase means that it's more than one individual that needs to be held accountable and there and present to ensure that safety, security, and well being are all met. This is where we go into the idea of, nature versus nurture, and that comes into play. Is an individual um, is a child or a person, are they going to be a product of the environment that they grew up in, or is it the nurture and the care that they have in their lives? And does that really matter? Well, I like this concept and this idea because I find that it's just extremely important for us to really, really self-reflect, but also as much as self-reflection is important, look outside of just you. Life is so much more beautiful and fulfilling when you take time to be present, to be in space within people. I mean, if you go back into history, like most communities were tribes and then people, we as an individual, we move in packs, we move in groups. We're constantly shifting and doing in arenas of more than one person. Like no person, this is the reason why, and I went left, but the idea just came into my mind. That is the reason why in prisons, solitary confinement is a source of punishment because an individual will literally lose their mind when they're only alone in them with themselves for long periods of time. There's a level of necessity that comes with community. And so I say all of that to say, love thy neighbor, show up, allow yourself to care for something greater than just you and yours. And so I wanted to then also talk about what does community look like? Because community can look very different in a lot of different arenas. So there's many layers of community. Of course, the first is your immediate family, right? You've got a certain that's your first sense of community. It's the role in shaping your values, and where like it's also where the fracture of community can really begin. Because if your immediate family is not intact, or if that in and of itself has in some degree broken, it can create the need for self-preservation. But that's like your first sense of community, that immediate family. From there, you've got your extended family. This is where your traditional support systems come from. It's how family dynamics are created. It's where, like I said, in my family, the matriarch, my grandmother was the matriarch of our family, and she was the hub that brought everyone else together. So that extended family, that support system was much greater when she was here. At the time of her death, And since then, I do believe, like, when all of my grandparents have one by one started to pass, that extended family experience slowly started to shift and change, and we were not as close knit. But that is that second part of community. It starts with, it's created, your values and your ideas of community are created in your immediate, then it extends to your extended family. And then you've got friendships. Friendships are community, and that is your chosen family, the individuals that um, where you're able to create emotional bonds and supports, where you find like-minded individuals, and support one another. So that is another sense of where community can create and how that looks like. And then you've got neighbors and local community, your local areas. And in there, that power of local connection is where, true neighborhoods and places that actually allow individuals to be present. You've got activities and, neighbor helping neighbor and showing up for one another, and the ability to, like, really show love for where you live and where you're from and what you've got going on. And that's a concept and an ability to have community. And then beyond that local, then you've got, your online community in today's day and age and global. Your reach goes greater. And I say that to say each level of community continues to expand further and further and out. And where we are today, we with that being broken, I personally think we have a false sense of community when it comes to social media and the fact that we've got this online presence that feels our reach can be so great, and yet true connection is not there. And because of that, individuals now don't know how to have conversation, how to engage, how to show up for a person, how to be present. We can't even go to a dinner without capturing what is occurring, without recognizing who's actually sitting and enjoying the meal with you, right? So there's this other sense of, when we go greater, like, there's a sense of online community and this great sense of our reach being so grand now, and yet we're still so individualized. There's now almost like a dichotomy between social media making us feel connected when we're more separated than ever from relationship and true community. This then paired with us having a more sense of individualistic um, support and individualistic mindsets, I think those two then together create for that break in structure and that break in support. And so, with all of these ideas and these concepts, I did start to ask myself, how has society moved from what's best for the greater good to simply what's best for me? I started to question that. And I actually did find some studies specifically. And recent studies and surveys highlight that there has been a societal shift from community oriented values toward individualistic priorities. In that, there is a global rise. So, this isn't just like an American thing, there's a global rise um, from 78 different countries over the span of the last 51 years that indicates that individualistic practices and values have increased by approximately 12% since 1960. Surveys also show that only 30% of Americans believe they can reliably trust others. And get this, a mere 16%. I'm going to just real quick again, 16% feel a strong attachment to their local community, reflecting a move away from collective well being toward clear individual concerns. That for me hit, to think that in this entire country, only 16% percent of individuals feel any kind of strong connection to community shows that shift in where we've gone. So then I thought, okay, so then what are the effects of this, right? What's the impact on this hyper individualistic way of living now? Well, in it, that's where you have less collaboration and more division because it's very easy to say, this is me, that's you. Like you're not trying to be collaborative in your approach or collaborative in your way of thinking. That's where you end up with extreme wealth gaps, political polarizations, and for lack of a better word, just disconnection. It's also why and where you end up seeing mental health concerns growing and these like loneliness epidemics that happen, individuals that end up developing more instability, insecurities, unstable ways of living, negative self-harm practices, due to a lack of connection. I mean, and then when you think about it, it's also a cultural thing. Like, there is a difference between collectivist versus individualistic cultures by trade and by nature. And in the ways that those things happen, societies then are filmed accordingly. However, worldwide, even in the most collective and more communal countries, we are seeing a shift, a move away from true community and showing up. The true concept of it taking a village. And quite frankly, that just saddens me. It makes me sad because it's being alone, like completely alone, can be frightening and can feel very lonely. And I worry, if I'm honest. I worry about where we'll go and what happens when you have people that can't see past self. If you only are worried about you and yours and you don't show anything for outside, that's where you lack compassion. You lack an inability to agree to disagree. I don't think that's even a thing that we can do anymore. The ability to learn, the ability to grow, the ability to expand your own thought process past what you're familiarized with because you're too focused on just the here, the this, the me. And the world is just filled with so many different people and so many different ideas, and just that is our secret sauce. It's our differences. It's what makes us different is what allows us to have variety. And in those differences, when we come together and we can find ways to connect, it creates for connection and for, again, community and the ability to just be. And I worry on that heading in this continuing, should I say, on heading into this individualistic concept. So I started to then consider, so then how do we rebuild and how do we strengthen community? If what I'm saying is that there's a breakdown, and if studies have also shown us that worldwide community is not something that's important anymore and we've lost it, and because of the fact that we have expand our community so vastly with the internet and yet lost true connection, how do we really build? So the first are, I'll give you first steps are personal steps, and that's very individualistic. It's invest time in relationships. Checking in on someone to just say, "Hey, how are you doing? Hey, are you okay?" allows for connection. And it's a very we at times might be like, "Ah, no one they don't wanna be bothered, or this person doesn't wanna they don't need to hear from you," or whatever. You'd be surprised how many people will welcome a quick check-in, a, "Hey, thought of you." That's one way to just get it started. The second is show up. Show up for others. Be a reliable person. Be someone that people can know and rely on, that if no one else in this world cares, or no one else in this world is going to show up, be the one that does. Show up and get to know your neighbors. Say hi. Look up from your phone when you're in a line and actually just smile and say hi to a person. Those small little things, personal steps, will create connection and community quickly. So now let's think bigger picture. How do we rebuild community from a bigger standpoint? Support your local community. Support small businesses and individuals. Go out. Stop. And I apologize because I am an Amazon lover. Let me just catch myself. My own disclaimer. I love internet shopping, but go outside and go support your local businesses and allow your local economy to thrive by investing back in to the community that has also given you so much. I mean, honestly, just go outside. Like, let us start leaving our houses and start going back out into community and rebuilding and just showing up for one another. And then finally, it's a mindset shift. I feel like we have to move from me to more of a we. And there's power in the collective, and there's power in that collective thinking, and thinking not only what's best for me, but what's best for we. Start to Whether you come from a background of faith or spirituality, or you have but there the world is vast and there is so much out there. I believe that we just have to begin to open ourselves up to care for more than just what is. When you start to do that, and I made a promise, and I even told my engineer that I was not going to go political because that is not what this is about. But I will just say this one little tidbit, and it's not to say anything great. I just personally think that if you just do an easy mindset shift from me to we, and you think about what's good for the greater good versus what's good for myself, you will find that small changes in community, being more compassionate, finding what makes us similar versus what sets us apart, can have a lasting impact on how we move, show up, and live in today's society and environment. Thinking that things that are happening have nothing to do with you today can cause vast implications to you when something happens and it does affect you. And at that point, there's no one there for you to rely on, because those that would have shown up are no longer available to be there. So let us start to change our mindsets, and let us start to think about we before we think about me. This was just more of a public service announcement episode. A GetSetWithLissette is creating a community of inspiring conversations that empower individuals to get set, but more than that, a community of support, a community of light, a community of positivity. And in order to create that, we need to discuss the essence of community, the idea of moving into being community again, and getting out of our own ways. So let's just discuss some key takeaways from this public service announcement. My first key takeaway is going to be what I just finished saying, which is the mindset shift, because that's where it begins. It begins with your mind, right? It begins on how we think about things. Try to shift from me to we and see if you can't find the greater good in that. My second key takeaway is that community is multi-layered. It starts with your immediate family and then extends out. But in and of itself, of all of those, allowing for that to happen is important. And having that, should I say. My third key takeaway is to just take small steps. Show up for someone when they ask you to show up. Make time to just check in with those that mean something to you. Don't wait to do tomorrow what you can do today. A quick, hey, you came to mind, I was thinking about you. You don't know the impact that that can have on a person. And my final key takeaway is that it takes a village. It genuinely takes a village. Not just it takes a village to care for a child, but it takes a village and it takes community to support, show up, and care for one another. And we will always be stronger together than what we are divided and for self. You can accomplish more together, is what I really want to say, than by yourself. So as always, guys, I just want to impart some light, some love. I want us to start thinking about ourselves as a greater group. I want us to begin to really, really think about your fellow neighbor. Really, really start thinking about how you can show up for people in your community more. And let's get out of our own ways. So, as always, sending light, sending love. Bye.